Hey, welcome to the second episode of the podcast.
ACECAST.
Of the ACECAST, really important. Welcome to the second episode of the ACECAST, and I'm here with Lauren. Lauren, why are you in the seat? What brought you here? Tell me a bit more about who you are.
Thank you, Mila. So my name is Lauren Quiros. I originally came from Los Angeles, California. However, I came to the Netherlands to get my master's degree in environmental science from the University of Utrecht. And then I really wanted to work for the ocean cleanup in Rotterdam, so I was able to then transition from my master's degree and work for the ocean cleanup as a scientist, an oceanic scientist, studying floating plastic debris within the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in the Pacific Ocean. And of course, as I was working within the laboratories and the scientists, you really started to understand that there's a lot more than just mitigation issues at hand. We really need to start to go after a bit more of the source. And when I say the source, it's more so where the pollution is coming from. So, not only the product itself, but the consumers, the corporations, and then ultimately, I wanted to try to bridge the gap between scientists, data, and business models and business and corporations. So I ended up taking a leap of faith. And 4 years ago, I made the jump from becoming a scientist and working then into corporate. And then I followed this incredible directive that was coming 3 years ago called CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, was following it from the very origin. And then pretty much wanted to work for a regulatory change management firm that was going to embody also the upcoming CSRD directive into their projects and business models. So then I pursued ACE, and I worked for the past 2.5 years creating workshops, motivating C-suite executives and their teams. And ultimately now I just finalized my first full project from start to finish, incorporating a CSRD project and finalizing a compliant report that just went to publication last month. So That is my background.
That's an amazing achievement. I think what everybody is doing with the CSRD, I think it's really well done. That also brought me here. I researched 38 organizations, not only financial institutions, but a bit broader, to their CSRD efficiency, how they went through the process and everything in there. Because, as you said, you already have experienced the entire process. So I think that's the interesting dynamic between us. Maybe a bit why I'm here, why CSRD, why it's interesting for me. I think as you mentioned, they're great, a lot of urgent challenges that we need to tackle together, and through systematic change, which can be achieved and is needed in the financial institution to really drive that urgent change. I think the CSRD is a great tool, especially doing the double materiality assessment at the beginning, that really can achieve that if we actually putting all those ESG factors in the license to operate of every organization. And that's more the reason why I'm here. And I think doing that, we also want to make it that a regulation does what it's meant for, that it can drive actual change. And that's why I research efficiency. Yes, I'm a data nerd, so I like to see how we can do that. And some interesting findings. And it's you can tell me probably way more.
So just to clarify, I pretty much have run a project from start to finish with a global international corporation, and Mila has done incredible research trying to understand the efficiency behind the CSRD process implemented in corporations, especially the financial institutions. Yeah. So from here on out, what we'll do is we're going to pull questions at random, and we're going to ask each other questions coming from two different types of backgrounds within the same silo of CSRD. So shall we begin?
Yes.
Let's see who's up first.
Bring it on.
I think, okay, so this is for me to ask you, Mila. So Mila, you analyzed 38 organizations. What surprised you most about how uneven the CSRD process in FTE was?
Yeah, so maybe to give a bit more background what I really did, I looked into 38 organizations and I asked them questions about how much time that they spend in FTE on their CSRD process and the different stages within that process. And after that, my background is in econometrics, so I was trying to find relationships there. I asked them questions about their maturity in the people that they have, like the management involvement, the data system readiness, data quality, governance, like all those different organizational elements, as I would call them now for now.
And how did you come up with those organizational elements? How did you know to ask those specific pillars?
Like at ACE, we have a lot of expertise in what is important, and also research. There is a lot of research about how to institutionalize new regulation in an organization, and there are always important pillars in like people, processes. The same things that are important in other regulations are enforced here as well, or important to incorporate. So I looked at that, and the interesting thing is that financial institutions are in a highly regulated environment already, so they do have some expertise already on how to create their processes, how cross-functional teams work together. And that's what non-financial institutions can maybe learn from financial institutions in terms of their data quality issues, whether they have a data ownership people, because ESG data is very spread across the entire organization, and that's also makes it really difficult to really grasp the right important information from every part of the organization. But I think you experienced that firsthand.
I did.
Yeah. How was it for you?
For me, yes. We, at the organization I worked with, or the corporation I worked with, it was they had started from scratch. So I came on as an external project manager with a specialization in CSRD and project governance and project management, and thankfully stakeholder engagement, because I think, as you have seen in your research and with my experience, there is so much stakeholder engagement involved. There's so many different types of departments, especially with an international global organization, cultures. They also went through a merge last year, and they're still finalizing that merge. So also you are dealing with a little bit of, people trying to see where they fit, and people leaving and people coming. So there's a lot of transitions. So I think it was a very fun, dynamic, kept you on your toes type of project. So I had a little bit extra spice in my project, but ultimately I think that all corporations that had to deal with CSRD really got to understand that there was so much more communication needed throughout all the different types of departments, not just maybe the financial department and the sustainability department, but now you had to really go not only horizontally through the organization, but then also vertically to make sure that the communication was communicated.
Right, in all directions.
Yeah. Why don't we go one on one? Because I want to make sure we all have more time to address broader topics. So why don't you choose one and then?
Amazing. So much of finance already runs under regulation. What made the CSRD feel different for you? Or within the organization that you work for?
Very good question. I think this was one thing that is different about CSRD specifically. With financial regulations, you may have just a silo of working with financial employees, or you having that same mindset, a little bit of the same personalities that really do well with numbers. Mm-hmm. When you go for now CSRD that covers so many different categories, you have the environmental pillar, you have the social pillar, and the governance pillar, but more granular. That's the difference with CSRD and any other ESG regulation or financial regulation, is you really have to incorporate so many different types of personalities, so many different types of functions, so many different types of departments. So I think the finance has to be a little bit more motivating to engage other departments to work and collaborate together. So I think that's a little bit different from the other financial regulations that are out there that I've seen on the market.
So it's really cross-functional. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Did any sector like financial services consistently perform better or just struggle differently?
I think almost all organizations struggle in their own way. A lot of organizations are, and of course I only research them like in a small amount, so people who are in the field, they know way more, but I think just high over, different organizations have different maturities in various elements. So you can communicate very well, but if your systems are not in place, or if you don't have how you tackle audit review processes in place, then it's a different ballgame, and vice versa, it's as well.
Yeah.
So yes, they're very different, and I think that also made it interesting because we can really learn from each other in like the expertise that you gained and that I researched, but just to speak up. And also that's why we also have this podcast to share expertise, because we can learn from each other.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think with the stakeholder engagement, as you mentioned, that's a really, really, really huge topic where there are different, it's everywhere important, but in different industries there's also a different maturity in how you collaborate with your stakeholders. And
Yeah.
also,
And based on your data, actually, the final question on this paper, is there such a thing as a mature CSRD organization yet, or is everyone still finding their way in the CSRD trilogy?
Yeah. If there is an organization who is already mature, I would love to see how they are doing things, because I think that would be really interesting. But yeah, of course, you never see all the organizations that are doing a CSRD report, but I think it's still such a one-off project at this point for a lot of organizations. And you try to embed it in a reoccurring CSRD cycle, but it's just so difficult because it has so many different angles. So
and it'll be exciting to see the next year's cycle publication.
Yes, and that's why, if we talk about why we're here, really embed this in an organization. That's what we like. A one-off project is super cool and amazing, but how to really bridge that gap between that compliance and building an actual capability, I think that's where the real interesting and important aspects come into.
And I agree so much with you that I made sure that I can ensure that I am with the organization I helped kick off their first project, that we will be there to help them embed their business as usual as well. So I'll be with them for the next couple of months, if not maybe hopefully the next year, as an advisor, just to make sure that we can see them actually improve with their maturity model and so forth. So it's really exciting and important to make sure that follow-up is there. So.
Yeah, that's really, really important. I agree.
Let's see who's next.
For you,
oh, it's for me.
Did you have clear governance from the beginning, or did you build it on the fly?
So the question was, did we have clear governance at the beginning, or did I build it on the fly? Thankfully, the organization I worked with, I had already a repertoire with them. I had worked with them before as a ESG data and reporting support. So I knew a little bit of who was where. However, the merge made it very interesting because people were leaving. But I think I had a little bit of a advantage because I knew some of the stakeholders, of course, not to the CSRD capacity and where to place them. But I think that initial engagement I had with them was very helpful to help motivate to start building a governance structure, not necessarily on the fly, but I did start from scratch. Yes.
So there was no team. Wow.
Nothing. So it was, but they did have departments in place. For example, there was a sustainability team, there's a financial team, but of course to rally the troops up and to make sure everyone had clear responsibilities, mandates. I had to create a project team. I had to create the steering committee. I had to make sure everyone understood what their role was in these different project teams and committees. Was all cultivated during that project.
And because you said before that you're going to stay there to help them out in this reoccurring CSRD cycle, will that governance stay the same as what you built in the beginning, or how do you see that structure changing? Or
great question. The great news is that I played a very key role in that project. I was the project manager, so they hired a new internal employee to take over that specific role, which is fantastic. And she's amazing, and she's very assertive. So my understanding, first of all, I get to start in a week actually, so I had a little bit of a time off because we just did our publication. But ultimately, I will encourage them, of course, to keep the governance structure. However, of course, I think it's important to have dialogue with all stakeholders that were involved, make sure that they are on board with how we will progress moving forward, make sure the governance is extremely, not necessarily rigid, but improved. I just want to make sure everything across the lines can be improved. And I just want to make sure that every stakeholder internally has had their stamp of approval in an efficient way so we can already move forward. But I think making sure clear communication of how the governance will run for the future will be integrated with all the feedback. I think that's very important.
That all the lessons learned are included.
But we had a great time, I will say. By the end, it was a great time. I think we had really nice feedback by the end. So.
Yeah, and it's impressive, like really building it from scratch, because that's also different. Like each organization is in a different, like again, we don't want to say the maturity every time, but it is in a sense maturity, like with their governance, and like where you are, like improving is always great, but building it from scratch is additionally
impressive. But the corporation had really awesome people that were also motivated as well, so it wasn't just me rallying the troops alone. So it was really nice. Okay, I will ask you a question now. Mila, you found that internal collaboration was the one consistent factor among efficient organizations. What did those teams actually do differently?
Yes. So indeed, how do I know that this was the one consistent factor? That's maybe important to also give a bit of a background. I did a data development analysis, and that's how you can see that the inputs that you use, or sort of organizational elements that I reviewed or researched, how are they influencing the CSRD efficiency? Or the FTE spent on the CSRD in specifically, and then relative efficient, so only the organizations that were in my sample. And what was interesting there is that the most efficient organization, given that they have the same quality, so it's an assumption, of course, was the ones who have like cross regular meetings, who answered yes to questions, or like we have the same definition when we talk about CSRD related topics or the different ESRSs, that we speak the same language. So the organizations who had this cross-functional collaboration well in place. And that was really interesting. I think it's two sides. Of course, I was not there with them, but it's at the one hand having regular communication, but at the other hand, also while you're communicating, that you're talking about the same thing and that you really speak the same language. And I think those aspects are both important.
So important. I cannot tell you how many workshops we gave, the ACE team and myself, how many workshops we gave to all the different, I think we gave over 30 plus workshops.
Wow.
to it depended, of course, right? So if you had a team of 5, or you have a little bit of a VIP situation, you have a C-suite executive, you know, I would make sure I would also calibrate the type of workshop I'd have to give. How much do they know of CSRD or the ESRSs and the DMA, or maybe EU taxonomy, and do a calibration, and then customize, adapt workshops based on their awareness, knowledge, making sure, and then grouping those people to be efficient with everyone's time. That way the questions that are asked are also covering the full spectrum of whoever's in that workshop, being efficient. So that was also integral. So I completely agree with your observation.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that, because maybe to add on that, also I did regression analysis, and then there was a significant relationship between ESG training, so ESG related topics or CSRD related training, with the time that they spend on the CSRD. So there might be there is a positive effect in terms of that you do it more efficient, probably also because you see the relevance, you're more motivated, you speak the same language. So like motivating and teaching about ESG topics, is I think really important, which is also really underlined in other research. And maybe because that's the second question here on my paper, how did you then assess your internal team's CSRD readiness? As you mentioned.
Honestly, it's not rocket science. I really, first and foremost, I think, if time permits, and honestly, time wasn't on my side. They started a little bit late, unfortunately. But ultimately, it's so important, first and foremost, to have like a 10-minute coffee. Majority of the time it was virtually, actually, because I ran this project almost entirely virtually, which is still quite incredible because we got to the finish line with working like with over 30 plus contributors. But I think first and foremost is just have that people connection. truly, like I know it sounds trivial, but just have that cup of coffee, have that 10 minute of really introducing yourself and asking, you know, how long have they been with the company? How's their day? What do they do what for the weekend? And then slowly bring them in to ESG sphere and then the CSRD topic. And then that way they can be a little bit more vulnerable in terms of just where they can't understand. Maybe they don't have the full understanding period, or they do, but ultimately it just allows them to be a bit more open with where they land in the spectrum of knowledge of CSRD. So truly, I know it's as not ridiculous, but as trivial it is, it's just have that cup of coffee and or tea or water, but it's just really gauging that person. And then also it's incredible what can happen in those 10-15 minutes is you also gauge how they like to learn. You know, how they want that workshop conducted. What are their weaknesses or challenges and or strengths, and how do you build on that? You want to make sure you build on those strengths as well, because then you build their confidence. You know, and I think those are the really awesome tips and tricks that any motivated project manager and or consultant that wants to really make an impact for their clients to do. I think that's really important.
Like really looking for this tailored way of learning with the individual that you have next to you. I think that's it's great that you mentioned that.
And it's truly a joy that brought the project so much more fun and playfulness, because you also ultimately you just work with people. It's ultimately what it is, and motivating them is a big part of it, and understanding how to do that is integral and key.
That's funny, because sometimes people we tend to go really fast in all the software products that are there, but we do not have to lose sight on the fact that it's people doing the job.
It's a beautiful balance of both. It's a balance of both. We are excited to create more efficiency for companies and reducing costs, but also retaining that people connection. That is what ACE is built on as well. So I'm a big, heavy part of this mission statement.
That's great.
Okay, I will ask the next one. Which organizational elements, data, systems, people expertise, or leadership involvement had the biggest effect on improving efficiency in the CSRD reporting process? And then which elements decreased the FTE?
All of them, actually. We literally mentioned this previously, but you can have like a really fancy automation system, but if you do not consistently apply the same data definitions, if you do not talk to each other, then you can have a fancy system, but it doesn't work out in the end. And it's with the other way around as well. So success, and that's what I also found in my research, is that the relative efficient organizations are relatively mature on all these 4 elements that you mentioned, and that successes really lie in the synergy of all those elements and not being like fantastic in only one of them. Because it is actually all those 4 elements.
And do you find that these corporations that have maybe have all 4 in a well-balanced way, did they put sustainability in their business model a bit earlier?
Yes, you do have some organizations who already did some voluntary reporting, but it's two-sided, and I did not find this explicitly. But what is your sustainability ambition can be like two-sided. I also asked those questions, but I did not find something significant. But it can either be the fact that you can really accelerate this whole CSRD process because you are motivated and you would like to go for a specific goal. But on the other hand, it can also be because you already discussed certain topics, that it can even lead to more discussion related to now to also follow the CSRD data disclosure requirements. So I did not find anything related to that. I'm really wondering that it can go both sides.
The feedback I received, because of course we did our due diligence and really discussed with a lot of the key stakeholders. And I mean, we talked to maybe like 20 people after the project was complete. What was the best part about this project? Of course, what were areas that were challenging and so forth. But something to highlight here is having that motivating person in a role where they can make an impact is integral. So I will use our situation as an example. So of course, I am extremely motivated intrinsically, externally. I am super motivated, not just to motivate people in CSRD, but also just to connect people between the bridges of departments, right? Because I always, deep down, I always wanted to bridge the scientist to the corporation. So that's always been a part of my DNA. However, you reach a glass ceiling, unfortunately. I can be as motivated as I want, and it was accepted and celebrated truly. I got really nice feedback. But in the end, the business model needs to match. You can be as motivated, you can be one person that has a key role, but the business model, the boards, the directors, the committees, everyone has to be heavily aligned with making sure that, of course, you can have a compliant report, but how about a really strategic report? And that, of course, comes with time, but that's something that I think really needs to be pushed for the next couple of years after this baseline of CSRD, is making sure that strategy now takes precedence over compliance.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And that's also, CSRD was not brought into place to only let companies be compliant. Like, it's also what is really the change and the effective strategic embedding in their business model that it was meant for. It's going to be so fascinating to see the company
in a couple of years for sure. I'm very excited, and this is something I'm hope to instill in this client, because I heard, I made sure to do my the follow-ups, and I've heard from certain people that they really want to make sure that the strategy is now implemented and it's not just a checkbox activity.
Because this is, maybe it's not on my paper, but because it's really interesting.
Have a glass of water.
A lot of people say, make sure that the CSRD is not a checkbox. You see it everywhere on LinkedIn, but how do you actually put it in? No, but from your expertise, how can you bridge that gap in your...
Well, first you have to be realistic.
Because...
So first it's realistic. First it's did you start in enough time so it's not a checkbox activity for the first round? The first round is over, right? Everyone has now complied, and everyone's reports are out now. So I think now this conversation is relevant, because I think everyone should be given a grace period for this first year. It was really hard for everyone to get to the finish line, more so because it's a brand new, huge disclosure with lots of new data. And also external audit was also trying to learn how to navigate the limited assurance activities that they had to do to comply as well. So I think this is now the relevant topics to be addressed this year and the following year is, okay, we have a baseline now. How are we going to strategically implement what we may have said or what we said that we will do in the future? How are we going to get to those commitments? What are the metrics? What are the targets? How are we going to follow up? Is the business model aligned? Are the stakeholders who are in control of making these decisions communicated and aligned? These are all very important topics to cover this year and the following year to make sure that it's not just a checkbox activity anymore.
Yeah, and as you said, it's logic that it's not in place at this point. We built the basis and now we are continuing.
Okay, it has a mind of its own.
This journey.
Yes.
Okay.
Was there a specific phase that organizations consistently underestimated, like double materiality assessment or stakeholder engagement?
But also I think the double materiality, a lot of organizations started already pretty early with that, but then they mentioned that they revisited and then the whole process has to be reviewed again. But also the data collection took, of course, a lot of time, and it goes simultaneously with sometimes the gap assessment, data collection, and reporting are a bit blurry. Of course, it's not separate siloed stages, but that's also from the organizations that I reviewed that was quite a or I assume it was a challenge because it took a lot of FTE for them. That especially because what would be, that's also a question on my paper. What would be then for you the most challenging stage, so to say, if you can really split it up into different stages?
It's a great question. I took the role as project manager for this very big international global corporation because I am old and I have a lot of wisdom. And I'm resilient. And however, I'm managing a huge team, right? And I can take a lot of hits, and I can take a lot of requests. And of course, because it's embedded in my DNA, and I really believe in helping, not helping, but educating the masses about just ESG and CSRD. I had this innate drive inside of me to just keep going into the finish line. That you really can't implement into certain people, right? That's just not part of their DNA. Yeah. Of course, this is just a checkbox for them, and also sometimes it's a headache for them, and it's just interrupting their work day, and it's a brand new, unnecessary work activity that maybe they didn't even know was coming because it was initiated so late. So for me personally, it was at times extremely hard to keep everybody motivated because it was getting really tedious and it was monotonous, and the marathon was turning into a sprint marathon, and people were burning out and we were tired, and being honest, like, so of course there's so many aspects. You have the aggregation of the data, you have the external audit, I think also was really hard. But again, it all came right back to keeping the team motivated. Like, I really had to stay calm and just make sure that they saw that I wasn't breaking in front of the groups and the projects, the steering committees. I kept it together, because if they see that the person who's like been cheering them on the whole time is starting to fall apart, then it just is a chain reaction. So I think for me that was really hard for me, because I was also getting very tired. It was a tiring activity, but I went to the end, and I'm still here.
So the team who is actually doing it, it's so important. It's like crucial throughout all the stages.
And just remembering that everyone doesn't have the same motivational factors behind them. And just stay strong, but you yourself take care of yourself, because you have to like put the face mask on first before you help others, right? You have to make sure you're okay, and that was the main goal. It's my turn, your turn.
Well done. What part of, I think you quickly mentioned upon it, but what part of the CSRD do you think people are still underestimating?
The motivation.
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm trying to make sure. Like, of course, there's so many factors. There's not just a one thing, but truly, I think the new team that's coming in to replace myself and our team that was, where we're the external consultants, I want to make sure that they are aware that they've got to, first of all, you have to have the knowledge behind you of CSRD and EU taxonomy and omnibus. Because that builds confidence behind you, and that confidence will get broken down as people are starting to become demotivated. It's just part of the game. So I think it's very important to just be very transparent with anyone that's going to take on this type of project, and everyone has to do it, especially the big corporations.
And it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because when I'm in conversations with people that I meet, but also with friends, like also in your personal life, like, why do you do what you want to do? I just started my career, but then you also ask yourself that question, and it's maybe not the place where you would see yourself in if you think about really going for these sustainability related goals. But on the other hand, you need to also speak the language of persons that do not immediately see value, and I think that's also maybe what you touched upon already, but really bridging that gap between this idealistic, between that idealistic view and really pragmatic, realistic. We have to be realistic. It's not everyone's priority. And we also agree with other priorities. So balancing those aspects, it's so important.
And I think people just having workshop training and stakeholder engagement training is very important, truly. Like, I've been blessed enough to have been working with workshops since I was 17 years old. I've been doing workshops in college and kicking out 18-year-olds because they were misbehaving, and it's very strange. And of course, you can't do that in the context in the corporation. But you definitely see that there are some people that have some pushback. They don't understand, like, why are we here? We're so busy, and oh my God, we have so much other things to worry about. It's true. And having that empathy is so important. And then having the time to take that coffee, that 5 to 10 minute coffee virtually, because I had to do it several times because they were, in different parts of the world. And just checking in and just saying, like, how are you doing? And don't bring up maybe the topic, but just ask them as a person. And that really just disarms them and helps them understand that, we're all people here, and we're just trying to get the job done. But ultimately, I want, of course, people to be happy to work with us as ACE, and also just to get the job done. So that's how you do it.
Yeah. Well done.
Thanks. Let me ask you a question here, Mila. Ooh, one of my favorites, data collection. So data collection came out as the most FTE heavy phase. Very true. What made it such a bottleneck in your research?
Yeah. So I asked various questions about like data readiness, system readiness. If I'm understanding it or remembering it correctly, I think almost 79% was like basing all their data collection still on ad hoc, getting the data from Excel sheets instead of taking it from all the internal sources and really embed it in your data collection process. So that does not have to be a problem in the first place, but also the fact that different departments have different Excel sheets. There are not clear data ownerships applied to that, and also that you have different definitions. So which definition do you take? And that all those elements create that much additional work upon it. So it's like data hygiene, not only for the CSRD, but just also really embedding ESG factors in your risk framework. It's so important that you have that data hygiene in place. That's not what I found, but that's what I really believe. But I really saw that that's not in place in a lot of organizations. And this fragmentation, it's working in silos, and also reconciliation processes. So what if we have different definitions, or if there is conflicting data, because that will probably also be found. How are you going to deal with that? And really a structured approach. Where are you currently at? What are the first? You don't have to be perfect immediately. I'll go step by step. And I think you know that as best, like, where are you currently standing, and how can you just make one step forward to that, like, data hygiene, ESG data hygiene, not only for the CSRD, but just for the broader landscape.
And just to follow up on that, did you see it, because I see it often, when there is just not enough FTE capacity to help create that data hygiene at this current moment? Budget cuts are happening, costs are being slashed. I think this is a headache that a lot of corporations are dealing with.
Yeah, this is just in conversations that I spoke about it. I did not ask questions around it, but I think what you said, like, if it's a one-off project, if there is a lot of time pressure on it, some organizations did have an ESG data process in place on how to handle that in your data architecture in general, but a lot of organizations did not have that. And then if there is this compliance, like this deadline, you just need to email person X to give person Y a certain data point. And that's not wrong, but again, this is something that you really want to address in the second phase, is going towards that reoccurring and healthy, not only for the CSRD. Again, I think it's
CSRD is just highlighting the broader challenges that the financial institutions are dealing with, and in corporations in general.
I read a probability of default modeling where you integrate ESG factors. I think that's highlighting the importance, like making it financial language in the importance of integrating those aspects in your decision making. I think that's so crucial. So, okay. Did you experiment with AI or smarter tooling for data collection or classification or anything else in the process?
Yes, actually. It's a fun story, actually. Before I took on this role as the CSRD project manager, I had another project where I only had to deal with, I think, one huge master Excel file that I was in charge of, and it was my baby that I created. And I only had to deal with, I think, 5 different stakeholders to obtain data, to make sure the data was correct, making sure the data definitions were aligned with the new updates. It was a tremendous challenge. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe how it could get out of hand, or it could potentially get out of hand, because I was guarding it with my life, and I had to really make sure there was everything was tagged properly.
Yeah.
But it was really hard. And of course, I knew CSRD was coming on the horizon. And I said, oh my gosh, there is no way that this, if anyone goes about this traditional way, which most of the people will do, which is a gap assessment, how are they going to tackle all this new data?
Yeah.
And at the time, there was 1,144 new data points coming our way.
Yeah.
And I think I was only dealing with 50 in that one Excel sheet. And I was like, this is crazy. So long story short, the ACE team, we had a software developer, we had a data scientist, 2 juniors and myself, and we went at it and made a gap assessment software tool called CSRD Reg Gap. And ultimately, it was just a very user-friendly software that we could really track as many participants as possible that wanted to use a particular, so there's 12 books in the ESRSs. We made one for each of the books, or 11 books that were actually with disclosure requirements and data points. And we made them individually. So it took about 4 months.
Wow.
And this is before eFrag published their Excel file. So we did it from scratch by ourselves. But boy, oh boy, did we know that information back and forwards and inside and out. But we created this software tool, and it was honestly incredible. We actually took it to the corporation we started the project with.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
You really used it.
We used it.
And then do you see, because you said it's about people, but also the tools that you bring
so
do add value.
It was a huge valuable tool. The reason why was because, and remember how I said in the beginning of this conversation, we started from scratch with this whole project, right? So there was no governance structure. You had no idea who anybody was, where they were, because the merge had just happened. So you're also trying to figure out how much do these people know? Are they the right person? Is this the right department? Also, CSRD is new. So you have just so many different variables. So this tool that we utilized not only made the definitions, we're very clear with explaining these definitions in layman's terms. There was no room for interpretation. We pulled exactly from the actual disclosure requirement and the ESRSs. And then it was user friendly, and then it pumped out all this information in one go, auditing who answered what, their specific response, and if they had the data or they didn't have the data. And so it was twofold. It was a fivefold, because what it did was it helped us first of all onboard everybody. We gave workshops to everybody. We with those workshops, I then realized, who am I talking to? Will this person be a huge contributor from data, or maybe just 1 or 2 data points? It was just, and then that's how we built the governance, truly, about who was in the project team, who was in the steering committee, and who was going to be giving us the actual hard data. It was
so it really assisted you in doing your work by really accelerating actually the process, as you say. Like getting that in place. And that's also what right tooling does, right? It assists a
Don't
process.
get me wrong, there's always room for improvement. It was
but that's also what you try to also at ACE. Like, we are obviously people building AI software. So we are aware, like, that's what our goal, like building, accelerating tools, not that people should use in the end. So making their life easier.
I truly think the Reg Gap tool helped me and the project and the corporation tremendously. And
okay, we
will continue. But thank you so much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
To the next ACECAST.
Thank you. Have a good evening.